This is a production of WGBH2 Boston.
We're back live from Manchester, New Hampshire on this final full day of campaigning ahead of the First in the Nation primary tomorrow. And tonight on Greater Boston, everything you wanted to know about election 2016 and more. Emily Rooney, Marjorie Egan, and Adam Riley join me to talk state of the race, the why of our own governor's endorsement, and whether Robot Rubio is cooked. Then Massachusetts Attorney General Maura Healey, she's a Clinton supporter, is here to talk about what Madeleine Albright, Gloria Steinem, and the candidate's husband Bill had to say about young women supporters of Sanders and Sanders himself. Plus, Donald Trump called in today to Boston Public Radio. You'll hear whether he expects to get Tom Brady's vote. We're also joined by Cokie Roberts, Bill Kristol, Michael Steele, Chris Matthews, Chuck Todd, and Ben Cohen. There's more, but let's get started. The Massachusetts State House is closed, and Boston is snowbound, but here in New Hampshire, we're just a little over 24 hours away from First in the Nation results starting to roll in. It's nonstop action. The energy is palpable. WGBH special correspondent Emily Rooney has been hitting up as many presidential events as humanly possible. And although the polls show Trump and Sanders both with strong leads, there's a sense that Yogi Berra had it right. It ain't over till it's over.
Hundreds crammed into a small auditorium at Manchester Community College this morning, while hundreds more spilled into the hallways. The surprise warm-up act was none other than Chelsea and Bill Clinton. By the time Hillary Clinton arrived, supporters had waited more than 2 hours. No one seemed to mind.
Whoa, thank you so much!
Meanwhile, rival Bernie Sanders has stayed put, courting his core backers, young people.
You're ready to make a political revolution?
On the Republican side, Donald Trump is making nice, talking to all the media, including Jim and Marge on radio today. Come to think of it, he was pretty nice to us the other night, too.
I like that question. Thank you, Donald.
Then again, the Donald did get back to being himself.
I'd like to use really foul language. I won't do it. I was going to say they're full of but I won't say that. No, it's true.
Also true, Ted Cruz beat Trump in Iowa and continues to ride the victory.
Donald Trump is very rattled right now.
Marco Rubio's third-place finish out of Iowa gave him a big boost. But there's universal agreement he hurt himself and a repetitious barrage of insults directed at the president during Saturday night's debate.
This notion that Barack Obama doesn't know what he's doing is just not true.
There it is.
He knows exactly
there it is,
what he's
the memorized 25-second speech.
Jeb Bush, whose numbers are trending slightly upward, continued his attacks on two rivals.
Marco doesn't have it. He's gifted. Ted Cruz doesn't have it. He's gifted. I'm not saying that they're not talented people.
One who doesn't appear to have it either, New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, who picked up an important endorsement over the weekend.
Is our friend, my friend, and your next president, Chris Christie.
Friend since he ran for governor in 2010, Charlie Baker is out on a limb on this one. Meanwhile, still smiling, John Kasich. Still stumping, Carly Fiorina. And still waiting in the wings, Ben Carson. It doesn't look like Tuesday will be a long night for him.
Nearly 16 points ahead of the rest of the pack. And on the Democratic side, Bernie Sanders has a nearly 13-point lead in the state. Emily Rooney joins me now, along with fellow GBHers, Adam Riley and Marjorie Egan. Good to see all three of you. Raise your hand if you're exhausted. Go ahead. Okay, thank you. Not you? What's
no, I'm ready to go.
Okay,
ready to go.
Let's start with the GOP side. Multiply what you did in your package, Emily, by 3 or 4. At 7:59 on Saturday night, Marco Rubio was the man, and then this happened. Check this out.
And let's dispel once and for all with this fiction that Barack Obama doesn't know what he's doing. He knows exactly what he's doing. But I would add this. Let's dispel with this fiction that Barack Obama doesn't know what he's doing. Anyone who believes that Barack Obama isn't doing what he's doing on purpose doesn't understand what we're dealing with here. Here's the bottom line. This notion that Barack Obama doesn't know what he's doing is just not true.
There it is.
He knows exactly what he's doing.
The memorized 25-second speech.
Well, that's the reason
everybody.
why this campaign is so important.
Did everything change? I mean, some people are even comparing this to Rick Perry not remembering what was the third cabinet secretary that he was going to eliminate. Adam, starting with you. How bad was this?
Well, I mean, I was listening to it driving our colleague Peter Katz's home from New Hampshire, and I was freaked out. It was really strange. It was surreal, especially when Christie hopped in and said, there he goes, he's doing it, and then he did it again after that. I think the huge question is whether this was sort of a protracted brain freeze or whether Rubio has some kind of great secret polling data that shows that every time he casts Barack Obama as this sort of evil genius, his numbers go up. And I think that's a possibility. I don't think he would have repeated it this way unless he was convinced this was a winning line of argument.
Does it hurt him?
I don't know, but the last couple of days he had to change his venues because there were so many people who wanted to get in there to see them that he had to cancel events and make bigger places. But he's the only candidate that was in the top tier that actually started trending downward. So I would say yes, it did hurt him.
I'm going to ask you the same question 4 times in a row and see how that works. What do you think of this thing?
I thought it was totally bizarre, and we don't have an explanation for it yet. And there are these moments where you see something that is so crazy. You think, did he just lose his train of thought? Was he totally intimidated by Christie bashing him all the time? What happened? And along with the way he looks, which is like he's about 12 years old, I think it did hurt him. Whether it's long term, whether he will recover, I don't know. But it gave me the creeps.
You know, one thing I should have mentioned is that he's apparently been using this line on the stump. I mean, he hasn't retired it. He's kind of doubling down with it. So whether he's trying to make lemonade out of lemons, yes, he's doing it here.
That's why Christie kept saying it. That's his stump speech. That is what he says.
Right. Okay, speaking of Christie, let's move on here for a second. Emily brought you a little bit of Charlie's Baker's endorsement. Let's bring you a little bit more, followed by Governor Christie's reaction to the endorsement this morning in the lobby. Here it is.
This is a man who understands how to lead. He understands how to set an agenda and a vision and a course and go somewhere with it.
Governor Baker's endorsement once again tells people that you want folks who've actually accomplished things to come and be our nominee and ultimately be our president. And Charlie Baker's endorsement means a lot to me. Everybody wanted it, and I got it.
Question here is easy. Why? Why did Baker do this? The guy's almost at the bottom in the polls. He's seen by many people as almost the anti-Baker in a lot of ways. He's bullyish. Why did he do this?
I don't think it's a big deal. I think it might help Christie a little bit because Charlie Baker is so popular.
Yeah, but why did Baker do it, whether it helps or not?
Well, maybe he did it because they've been friends for a long time. He said how he can't stand basically Trump and Cruz.
Are there 11 million reasons some people think that Republican governors insist?
I think it could just be out of friendship, out of loyalty, and he sees him as a centrist, and he just maybe wanted to help out a buddy.
Why do you do it, Emily?
I'll tell you why, because Chris Christie back in 2010, when Charlie Baker ran for governor the first time, was one of the most popular governors in the entire country.
That's a good point.
And he endorsed Charlie Baker. He came to town, came to those big Chris Egan fundraisers. He was a big name in Boston. We were all running around trying to get him. He did Charlie Baker a bunch of favors.
So you think it's a loyalty kind of thing?
Definitely.
Payback. I mean, payback in the best sense of the word, not the worst.
Yes.
All right, I got more of a conspiracy theory, but first I need to point out that the irony here is that Charlie Baker allegedly lost to Deval Patrick because he acted too much like Chris Christie in that campaign.
That's a wonderful point.
Which is, sort of worth pondering. Here's the best explanation that I've heard. Charlie Baker had to pick someone because until he did, he was going to be asked, why aren't you condemning Donald Trump? Why aren't you weighing in on this, latest outrageous remark Trump made? He picks Chris Christie. As you noted, Christie's far down in the polls. It's probably not going to be a real factor in the race, so he's done with that. He doesn't have to answer to anything going on in the Republican race.
He would tell us on the radio every
month. For exactly the reason I said, because otherwise,
my state standing with the Republican who's president.
Because otherwise, the next time you guys had him on and Donald Trump had said, whatever, we need to waterboard everybody who thinks I'm a bad candidate or something like that, you would have asked Baker about that, and he would have had to answer for Trump. Now he doesn't.
So what, says him? Let's move to the Democratic side, if we can. Here's Bill Clinton in 2008 talking about Barack Obama, the candidate, followed by Bill Clinton talking about the current opponent of his wife. That would be Bernie Sanders. Here it is.
Give me a break. This whole thing is the biggest fairy tale I've ever seen.
Jesse Jackson won South Carolina twice in '84 and '88. And he ran a good campaign, and Senator Obama's run a good campaign. He's run a good campaign everywhere.
This health care thing, for 20 years, Hillary's opponent had a different plan, which he called single payer, but it was really 51 payers because the states had to pay 14% of it. When you're making a revolution, you can't be too careful about the facts. You're just for me or against me.
Okay, Democrats are split on this, maybe depending on your candidate. Half of the people I spoke to today said it's 2008 redux. He's going to hurt his wife again. The other half I've spoken to said it is about time that Bill Clinton said what needed to be said. Marjorie Egan, who's right?
Well, I don't think he needs to be bashing women who are interested in Bernie Sanders instead of his wife. I think that was pretty bad. It's hard to say because there was almost a poignancy to his being out there at that junior high school in Milford. Wasn't that full? You know, you thought this is like the big rock star candidate, the second coming in presidents.
Who's that help?
Well, I just thought.
I mean, a husband standing by his.
I'm just saying that there was something almost a little bit sad about it. Whether it hurts her or helps her, I think bashing this woman hurts her. I don't know if it helps her.
Campaigns love sad, by the way. That's huge. What do you think, Emily?
I was going to say that I was at the event today, and Chelsea and Bill were both there as the warm-up act. Chelsea was fantastic, and she talked about her mother in very warm, personal terms.
Did you criticize Sanders at all?
No. And then Bill got up. Not a word about Sanders. Bill didn't say anything about Sanders either. He was terrible, though. I mean, you made the first.
How?
Terrible?
He was so downbeat and monotone, and once again, way too long, and kind of went into a wonky history about Hillary. But it wasn't personal at all,
Is this 2008 redux? I mean, there are. I mean, it was much more intense, I think, at least so far in the Barack Obama days.
It was, although I think it's ramping up. I think a big difference is that in 2008, Bill Clinton still had his fastball, and I saw him make his first appearance for the campaign this season, and it was clear he didn't. He's not energetic. He's not as charismatic as he used to be. I also
but
think
the criticism is not Donald Trump's of Jeb Bush. It's not that Bill Clinton is low energy.
No,
the criticism is should he be
I'm saying
Sanders?
I think that might be one reason that it hasn't taken on the edge yet.
Exactly.
But I would just add that I think this is disastrous because all the pushback that you're hearing from Clinton right now, whether it's Madeleine Albright, the former Secretary of State, saying there's a special place in hell for women who don't help other women, or Gloria Steinem saying that young female Sanders backers want to meet boys and that's why they're doing it. It radiates this sense of entitlement on the one hand, when it comes to Hillary Clinton, and this contempt for the people who are who have the temerity to back her opponent. And I think the longer that goes on, the worse it's going to be for Hillary Clinton.
We're going to play all that sound in a minute. Final thought.
One thing that I think does hurt her if he looks like he indeed has lost his fastball. A lot of people aren't really crazy about Hillary. Think, well, we get the twofer here. In reverse, we get the Bill Clinton that could be her wise advisor and counsel in the White House. And if he's lost his fastball, there goes that IG have a second person behind the scenes helping you.
Can I say one quickly?
I was just say agree with what Adam said because he doesn't have that edge anymore. It's sort of hard to hear what he's saying, so his complaints don't register the same way.
And I don't want you three to lose your edge. Double espresso. Repeat after me. Adam,
How many times do we have to repeat
great to
it?
see you. See you a little bit later. Thanks so much. As you get close to the end, a lot of venting takes place. Hillary Clinton supporters, from activist Gloria Steinem, the former Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright, the husband Bill himself, are sounding a common theme.
It's kind of not fair to measure most women by the standard of most men because they're going to get more activist as they grow older. And when you're young, you're thinking, where are the boys? The boys are with Bernie.
Just remember, there's a special place in hell for women who don't help each other.
People who have gone online to defend Hillary and explain why they supported her, have been subject to attacks that are literally too profane, often, not to mention sexist, to repeat.
Joining me now is Massachusetts Attorney General and Clinton supporter Maura Healey. And before you send an angry email, we had Chief Sanders campaign strategist Tad Devine on last week. You can still find that whole interview at greaterboston.org. You can see it too if you want. Hello, Attorney General.
Hello,
nice to
Jim.
see you.
Good to see you.
Let's separate that pack. When you first heard the Steinem comment, then she's walked it back a little, and when you first heard what Madeleine Albright said, what was your reaction, your visceral reaction?
Well, look, my visceral reaction was Gloria Steinem, Madeleine Albright, these are women I admire. They have long advocated for human rights, for women's rights, and they're entitled to their opinion and their statement. This is personal for a lot of people, and for women who have fought generation after generation to advance civil rights and gender equality, it's personal. Look, I think what's important here in this election is that Hillary Clinton is not running with the idea that people should vote for her solely because she's a woman. She's running.
That's one of the reasons she argues why people should vote for her, isn't it?
She's arguing, I think her argument is this, not that she's the first She's running so that she won't be the last. It's why she got on a plane yesterday and went to Flint. It's about creating opportunity for all young people.
Flint, about the horrible water crisis and poisoning. I want to stay on this, though. For Bill Clinton, how does deploying your husband to take on your opponent square with this whole feminist notion? That's what Bill Clinton did yesterday in Milford. I mean, is that work, or is that like really tone-deaf city?
No, I think you see people running for office who use spouses or partners all the time out there as surrogates for them on the stump, because the fact of the matter is you can't be in all the places you want to be. So that, to me, seems typical. And let's face it, Bill Clinton is a popular figure here in New Hampshire. He's done real well here in New Hampshire. And so he's very effective here in New Hampshire, I'm sure, on behalf of Hillary.
Let's step back for just a couple of minutes. Forget what they had to say, and let's talk about women and Hillary to begin with. 70-point margin amongst young men and women, 17 to 29. Obviously, young women supported Bernie Sanders. Overall, women supported Clinton there. In the most recent WMUR poll in New Hampshire, Bernie Sanders has an 8-point lead amongst all women in this primary. Why? Why is Hillary Clinton losing amongst women in New Hampshire?
Well, I will leave it to pundits and experts to
sort
explain
of
that.
Pundit,
but I'll offer you a view. You know, I've seen tremendous energy. I've been up here canvassing and campaigning. I've been doing the same back in Massachusetts. We had an amazing event a few weeks ago that was primarily focused on young women, saw tremendous energy and turnout. And, you know, from my perspective, what I talk to both young men and women about is, look, if you care about crushing student debt, Hillary Clinton is your candidate. If you care about access to health care, particularly women's access to health care, Hillary Clinton is your candidate. If you care about broadening economic equality for all, regardless of your race, your ethnicity, your gender, Hillary Clinton is your candidate, and I think it's as much as anything about connecting with people on those policy issues. I've seen energy on all sides. I think it's great that young people and young women are engaged and invested. That's what we want. But we've got some real issues on the table, whether it's health care, student loans, equal pay. These have policy implications for all of us, and that's what I'm trying to get people to focus on.
But more, Hillary, don't you think, I know you don't want to play pundit, but I'm going to try again. Don't you think when a young woman is told by, as iconic as Gloria Steinem is, as iconic as when she tells Bill Maher, young women are with Sanders because that's where the boys are. You don't think that young woman, even if she was leaning towards Hillary Clinton, says, excuse me, does it get any more condescending than that? I mean, that is driving people away, is it not?
I think young women I know can make up their own minds and think for themselves, and that's what they're going to do in this race. That's what they're going to do in this election, young men and young women. And it's great to see so many people involved and engaged. It's great to see more young people out. We need them to be out and invested in the. Oh, it's the best. I mean, I grew up here.
And you're a New Hampshire kid,
I grew up here, so it's been great to be back in old stomping grounds and knock doors and get out and meet voters.
I want to play one more thing for you. Not play it, but David Axelrod obviously knows a little bit about politics, key member of the Obama team. He tweeted today when there were reports on Politico that there were some staff shakeups that were imminent. And by the way, Hillary Clinton later said, yeah, we're going to do some things, but that's natural. This is Axelrod. When the exact same problems crop up in separate campaigns, he means 2 cycles with her, with different staff, at what point do the principals say, hey, maybe it's us? How do you us, meaning the Clintons? How do you respond to that?
I don't know exactly what he's speaking to. I mean, I've been on the ground here in New Hampshire for several days, and over the course of several weeks, there's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of momentum for Hillary Clinton right now. I feel great about things. I think she's running hard. I think she's meeting a lot of people. She's talking to a lot of people. I was with her last week at my high school in New Hampshire. I was again out on the streets in Exeter on Saturday, and I think she's been really clear about talking to people and taking the campaign to the people, listening to people, and I think she's going to have a great night tomorrow night.
Okay, January 20th, it's President Hillary Clinton. She puts her hand on the Bible. On the 21st, she calls you on the phone and says, want to be my Attorney General? What do you say? What's so funny? What do you say?
That's a ridiculous question, but I'll tell you what, Jim, I firmly believe that not only will Hillary be our next president, but she should be. She's the most qualified, the most experienced, and we need her right now. So I'm delighted to be here supporting her.
Knock on those doors.
Hey, we'll do that. Thanks a lot, Jim.
Attorney General of the Commonwealth. Bernie Sanders has stadiums full of people on his side, but not some high-profile folks back home, including the current and former governors of Vermont, who are out stumping for Hillary Clinton. One of them, former governor and presidential candidate Howard Dean, told Marjorie Egan and me on the radio that Sanders lacks Clinton's ability to get things done. So I consulted a caucus of high-profile political experts here in New Hampshire about whether Sanders is making promises he can't keep. I started with one of Bernie's biggest supporters, Ben from Ben & Jerry's, and asked about elected officials back home.
they're establishment politicians. They are also taking money from those same corporate interests. And until we elect someone who's not beholden to them, the situation's just going to get worse and worse.
What does he do to demonstrate that he can get ideas, particularly those that excite young people, into law?
He can't.
End of discussion?
End of discussion. He cannot do it. He says we need a political revolution. Our last political revolution was in 1776. You in Boston know it well.
We do.
Sanders is maybe closer to where the heart of the Democratic Party is right now. This Wall Street frustration has been building since before the Occupy movement, but of course the Occupy movement, in some ways, you could argue, is sort of the core of that Sanders campaign.
It's a space that a lot of people accept him in for this reason. He's honest enough and genuine enough to show that he's willing to fight for this. And he's done the things in his campaign to prove the point. He's not taking money from the very people that he'd have to deal with in Washington. He's not laying out an agenda that is not unfamiliar to people.
He doesn't come across as ideological. He comes off as logical. He ties everything into this one unitary theory, which most minds appreciate. A unitary theory. It's all Citizens United. It's the billionaires who now control our political process, and therefore they control everything. And by the way, it has a simplicity to it.
I sympathize with the discontent, but as we know from history, even legitimate discontent, if it just becomes pure discontent, can lead to bad outcomes. I mean, Bernie Sanders says, what is this, the business model of Wall Street is fraud. I mean, it's ridiculous, honestly. I mean, is that a grown-up statement to make?
The other leading New Hampshire candidate, Donald Trump, is not your father's Oldsmobile either. Here's how our caucus explains the Trump appeal.
They're tired of the same old, same old. They're sick and tired of the crazy lies to them about, particularly as conservatives, oh, we're going to repeal health care. We're going to get rid of Roe versus Wade. We're going to we were supposed to have abolished the Department of Education, in 1992? I mean, so, there's a lot of history there that, rank and file conservatives around the country remember. And along comes a guy like Trump who says, you know what, I'm not even going to make those kinds of promises to you because I'm just not. I'm just going to tell you this is what I'm going to fight for.
The following's real. These people are frustrated. They're angry. They're fed up. They feel left behind. Maybe it's culturally. Some of it's economic. It's a whole mix here.
People have lost their moorings, and they think somebody's to blame, and they think this guy might be able to fix it.
One reason I think people feel entitled to support him is he expresses our worries, our anger, our resentment, our concerns, and somehow he does it sort of half-jokingly, so people kind of don't think he's really going to go do something terrible. I still think it's irresponsible. No, it's worrisome.
Joy is what Bernie brings to the game. It's what Donald Trump brings to the game. Focus and joy. His message is nationalism. Nationalism. Yeah. The big shots have betrayed this country on immigration, on trade, on wars. They've betrayed us in both parties. And either we have a country or we don't. It's his best line. Either we have a country or we don't. And Trump is so good on the nationalism. I'm afraid he doesn't, not afraid, I suspect he doesn't know how good that message is.
Diversity has really been the GOP's calling card, as demonstrated by the 71-29 drubbing Romney took from Obama among Latino voters in 2012. But today's picture is much more like America. While the Democrats have a white guy and a woman running, on the Republican side, 2 Cuban-American senators and a black doctor. Will this translate into votes? 2 prominent Republicans shared their thoughts.
I think many are trying to, and I think the Republican National Committee is trying to. It's hard to do it in practice without looking either patronizing or sort of just, silly. Look, I think the truth is, if the Republican race came down to Cruz versus Rubio, that would have to have an effect on people's judgment of the character of the party. I mean, it is interesting that in Iowa, this conservative, evangelical, anti-immigration, apparently, Republican electorate, the 30%, 29% of them voted for for Cruz, as we were just saying. 23% voted for Rubio, and what, about 10% for Ben Carson? So I'm doing the math in my head here, but about 60% of them voted for Latinos and an African American. So, I think that itself over time will have some effect.
Look, I think we make sort of false comparisons when we talk about, you've got, people of color on the stage versus what's in the audience. Individuals deciding to run for the office is one thing. What the party does from the grassroots up to expand its breadth and width within a community is something very different. And again, just because you have a Ben Carson on that stage, just because you have a Marco Rubio and a Ted Cruz on that stage, does not translate in terms of what's happening among the rank and file at the grassroots level. If a state party, a county party, is not involved in opening itself up and embracing a diverse community, guess what? It don't mean a thing if you got a black man and a Hispanic standing on the stage for president.
You can see all of those interviews in full with Cokie Roberts, Michael Steele, Bill Kristol, Chris Matthews, Chuck Todd, and Ben Cohen of Ben & Jerry's on our website, greaterboston.org. We got a behind-the-scenes peek at last Saturday night's final Republican debate before the New Hampshire primary, at least a glimpse of the path to the debate. Let's be honest, this hallway scene with Ben Carson, back from doing his laundry, may have stolen the show. But not all the action took place on the way to the stage. Here's a look at the activity on the other side of the hall. As you can see, the media congregates in what we refer to as the spin room. This is where you see the press, hundreds of us hard at work distilling the debate. I was there making my own observations, not about the debate, but the reporters covering it. And here's what I discovered. There are three types of press people there. The intrepid reporter, hard at work, as you can see, Emily Rooney, watch as she pays close attention to what's happening on the screen. The hunter-gatherer, let's face it, there's a lot of swag. And there are those reporters, like the Marjorie Eagans,
hand warmers, Sour Patch Kids,
who are loath to see all that good stuff go to waste. And then there's me, the rare breed of reporter, the bon vivant. Here's a small taste. That's me, delicately nibbling to maintain my energy for the long night ahead.
The food is spectacular. Jim is on his third plate. It's a little embarrassing for all.
I want to be ready for the debate. I want to be all steeled and ready.
He even ate half of my plate.
And I don't even know him.
It was embarrassing.
Really, I don't know what to say.
You
should be very proud.
Proud I was indeed. What do you think? Who got it right in the spin room? Email us, tweet us, share your thoughts. One more thing before we go. Donald Trump called in today to Boston Public Radio, and he made some news. He told us he would have a litmus test for his Supreme Court nominees, that they have to be smart and pro-life. He said a corporation like newly Boston-based GE with billions in profits but zero in federal tax payments over 5 years would have to pay something in taxes under Trump. But probably of most interest to New Englanders, he had this to say about one high-profile Boston voter, Tom Brady.
Oh, I think he's going to vote for me 100%. I think Tom is a great guy, and he's one of the greats, and he's really a good person, too. And he had an article, I think, this week in GQ where he said such nice things about me. So, yeah, I would think he would definitely vote for him. He's my friend.
Has he told you, or you're just figuring that?
Well, I haven't even asked him. I don't ask anybody to do anything, but he's a fan like I am of his, and we have a great relationship.
The full Trump interview is online at WGBHnews.org. That's it for tonight. Please come back tomorrow when the First in the Nation primary will finally be here. Once again, we'll be live at the center for all of it, both on Boston Public Radio starting at 11, here on Greater Boston at 7, where Emily Rooney, Marjorie Egan, Adam Riley would join me, plus ABC's George Stephanopoulos, former Governor John Sununu, pollster David Paleologos, and more. Then be sure to head back to GBH Radio starting at 8. Marjorie and I will be with you all night until the two winners are declared. See you then.